What's going on, guys? Welcome back to DCS World and once again to the A-10C tutorial series. In this video we're going to touch on just briefly basic navigation. Now, navigating around via waypoints for the most part, and just seeing what our waypoints look like on the TAD page here, and I'm going to go into a little bit of the navigation functions of the TAD page. So how do we navigate in the A-10C? Well, the A-10C has a fully featured GPS INS navigation system. So INS stands for Inertial Navigation System. What does that mean? An inertial navigation system is essentially a system of gyros that are used to compute the aircraft's orientation, position, and movement in 3D space. And it uses that data to essentially plot, basically to plot waypoints and steer points that we can turn towards and basically build into a flight plan. So what we have here, let's look over at the TAD page briefly. Okay, let me pause the camera. Boom. Let me make the TAD page the sensor of interest, or SOI, with coolie left long. And remember, just as a quick side note, I'm going to be referencing the HOTAS commands here with their long and short terminology going forward. So if you haven't watched my HOTAS video, definitely watch that and download and keep that reference page that I talked about. I'll link it again in the video description here and probably for every video going forward, because it is just super useful. But anyway, with our TAD page here, I'm just going to turn the map off so that it's not so blinding. We have our aircraft in the center of the map here. We have a box right below us here. We have a line pointing up that way. I'm going to use the DMS down short command to zoom the TAD page out slightly. So now you can see we have a few boxes to look at. Okay? And a few lines to look at. So what we're looking at here is our current flight plan. In the A-10C, you can create flight plans that are either set up in the mission editor. So if you set up a series of waypoints for your airplane in the DCS mission editor, those are automatically converted into waypoints and a flight plan in the A-10C. Or we can set up a flight plan and waypoints using the CDU, which I will touch on in a later video. But what we're looking at here are a series of waypoints, and what we want to do is fly towards those waypoints. So we have, let me just zoom way the hell out here. So we have a whole bunch of waypoints. You can see we've got our airplane here, we've got one in front of us, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 down here. This little circular symbol is called the bullseye. And I believe I've touched on this before, but what bullseye is it is a reference point in a given theater to which you can reference other points. So the bullseye is set well in advance. It's essentially like a super waypoint in and of itself. And bulls allows us to reference other points. I'm going to potentially talk about bulls and bra referencing in a later video, but just know that bullseye is basically just a reference point in space that we can reference everything else from in a given theater. But back to waypoints and flight plans. So what we have here are a series of waypoints that are all part of a flight plan, and we want to fly along these waypoints to navigate from where we currently are to where we want to go. Okay, that's the basic principle behind waypoints and a flight plan. So if we look here at the TAD page, we've got our next waypoint here, waypoint 1, 2, 3, and I'm just using the TAD cursor with the slew control to point these out. 4, and then 5. Okay? So how do we actually navigate to them? Well, let me zoom back out and get my camera controls going here. Track IR, please. There we go. Let's look forward on the HUD. Whoops. Pause. You see this little box here? That is our currently selected waypoint. Our currently selected waypoint has a special name. It is referred to as our current steer point. They call it a steer point is because it is the active waypoint that you are currently steering towards. Okay, you're steering the airplane towards that point. It is your steer point. Okay, that's our current steer point, and it is if we look at the HUD symbology here, it is currently waypoint 1. It's got a name of mission 000. Waypoints can have different names if we want them to, but more on that in a separate video. We also have our distance to that waypoint, currently 8.2 nautical miles. And if we were actively flying forward, I've got the airplane in active pause mode right now, so we're just kind of sitting still. But if we were flying forward, that would be our time to, or our time to reach that steer point. So let's actually back my camera out here, get my camera controls moving again, track IR center, good. I'm going to unpause now.
Warning, autopilot.
Oops, sorry autopilot. I'm going to sort my airplane out here, get the trim going. So what I'm basically doing right now is I'm flying to, if you can see on the HUD, let me zoom in a little bit, I'm trying to align my path vector with that steer point, that box that basically exists in 3D space. Okay? Let me get the trim sorted out here. I've got no stores on this airplane, so I'm actually quite quick. So as you can see, if you're looking at the HUD, we're currently within 5 miles, 4.7, 4.6. The distance is now counting down. Okay. Now, what we want to do to manipulate our current steer point is we want to make our HUD the sensor of interest, and we do that with coolie hat up short command. And we know our HUD is soy because we have the star in the lower part of the HUD there. Oh, dropping down. Actually, I'm just going to engage the autopilot again. All right, so we're flying towards that steer point, 2 miles to go. You may notice I actually have steer point info up on the CDU over here. Don't worry about that for now, more on that later. Inside of 1 mile. And as we pass over this steer point, all right, the airplane switched to waypoint 2. Where is waypoint 2? We have, let me just active pause here real quick and zoom in on the HUD because we have a little bit of symbology to talk about here, and pause the camera. All right. We have another box over here with some numbers, and our path vector, our total velocity vector, now has a little line sticking out of it. It's a little bit obscured by the horizon line, but trust me, it's there. It's pointing to the left. What we have here is we have some symbology that indicates where our next steer point is. So what we have here is waypoint 2 is our current steer point. The number on top indicates our degrees offset, basically our degrees that we're not pointing towards there, the degrees that we would have to turn to point towards that steer point. So it is, that steer point is 30 degrees to our left. Okay? So we would need to turn 30 degrees to the left to line up with that steer point. The number below it is the distance to that steer point. That steer point is currently 14 nautical miles that away. All right? So I'm going to zoom back out, get my camera controls rolling again here. Whoops. Zoom. I'm going to unpause the airplane, and we're going to turn to the left You can see now it's 20. Now it's 10. And there's the point, again, floating in space there. I'm just going to pause. There it is. There's our current steer point. It is currently waypoint 2 called MSN 1, 13 miles away from us, and it will take 2 minutes and 56 seconds at our current speed to get there. Okay, let's unpause again. Get a little bit more speed in the bird here. That's the basics, though, right there, in a nutshell, of waypoint and steer point navigation in the A-10C. Now, these waypoints I preset in the mission editor, and in general, for most missions that you would fly, someone creates a mission, you'll generally have some preset waypoints to fly. That's pretty common, so you'll fly along those waypoints to navigate to your target area, or to some air base, or to just some point that you need to be at, your area of operations, your AO. You know, you can put waypoints on just about anything, and using the waypoints and steer points functions of the A-10 will help you get there. I'm just going to speed time up here a little bit. Nice thing about simulations is you can accelerate time, which is good. All right, inside of 2 miles.
Warning, autopilot.
Thanks, Betty. So we'll see it happen again. The waypoint is now crossing under us. Boom, we're on waypoint number 3. It is 20 degrees to our left and 7.2 nautical miles that direction. There it is. Now 6.7 nautical miles. Let's just get the autopilot going again. Just keep this symbology in mind. Current steer point is waypoint 3. Name is Mission 2, MSN 2. Distance counting down, currently 5 miles. And it'll take about another 60 seconds to get there. And we'll keep flying towards it. And you can see as I move away from it, the little tadpole line on the steer point points towards our path vector. If I fly over it, again, that direction, it flips side. If I turn way away from it like this, we get that box in the HUD there, and you kind of have to crane your head a little bit to see it sometimes. That tells us our deviation from it. So it's 30 degrees to our left and 1 mile that way. Let's turn back towards it. And we're flying over it now. And we've automatically selected waypoint 4 as part of our flight plan. Waypoint 4 is 30 degrees to our right and 20 nautical miles in that direction. There it is. Line up with the steer point, set the autopilot, and we are cruising. And that's pretty much it. That is the basics of how to use the TAD page to reference your waypoints. As I said, you'll see your waypoints on the TAD page with little boxes. You'll see lines between them if they're part of a proper flight plan. And again, if the waypoints have been created in the mission editor, they will be a part of a flight plan automatically. More on specifically setting up flight plans in a later video when we talk about the CDU. But that's the basics of navigation in the A-10C. So familiarize yourself with that, practice a little bit, and I will see you next video. Till then, take care.